King Saul had a son named Jonathan, and everything the Bible tells us about Jonathan indicates that he was a sincere, courageous young man. During Saul's reign, the neighboring country, the Philistines, was Israel's constant nemesis. Their army was bigger and more powerful than Israel's, and because they were so much stronger, they were constantly bullying the nation of Israel. They would steal their crops and their livestock. They stopped the people of Israel from having weapons so that they'd be defenseless against their enemies. And just a few years into King Saul's reign, the Philistine army moved into the land of Israel and set up camp, with garrisons throughout the land to intimidate the Israelites. The Philistines had 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and countless foot soldiers. Meanwhile, Israel had 3,000 unarmed soldiers. The threat was so overwhelming that many of the Israelites went into hiding in the hills, in caves, and in the heavy brush. Many others escaped out of the land. Some even switched sides and joined the Philistines. A band of about 600 soldiers was camped with Saul in Gibeah, waiting to see what was going to happen. Saul's son Jonathan was one of those 600 men. And while Saul was resting in the shade of a pomegranate tree, Jonathan was getting restless. He wanted to stir something up with the Philistines to give God an opportunity to bring Israel a great victory. Jonathan told his armor-bearer, "Let's take a walk over by the Philistine fort and just see what happens. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for there's no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few." His armor-bearer said, "I'm with you, let's go." Jonathan and his armor-bearer slipped out of the camp. Nobody even knew they were gone, including King Saul. As they were approaching the Philistines' lookout, Jonathan said, "Here's what we'll do. We'll call to the Philistine soldiers, and if they say, 'Wait right there, we'll come to you,' then we won't attack. But if we call to them and they say, 'Come on up,' then we'll know that God wants us to attack." Jonathan and his armor-bearer snuck over towards the Philistines' fort, and when they were just a little ways off, they both stood up. The Philistines saw them and said, "Well, these poor guys are finally coming out of hiding." Jonathan called out to them, and the Philistines answered, "Come on up here. We want to show you something." Jonathan told his armor-bearer, "That's our cue. The Lord's going to fight for us. Let's go." The two of them climbed up to the Philistine fort, and as soon as they got there, they attacked the enemy soldiers. They fought and killed 20 Philistines in about a half-acre of space. It sent a shock throughout the Philistine camp. The soldiers panicked so badly that it made the ground shake. Philistine soldiers began to run in fear. King Saul looked out from the shade of the pomegranate tree, and he saw the massive Philistine army in retreat. And as they ran, the Philistines were fighting one another. Saul couldn't figure out what was going on. So he said to one of his officers, "Quick, call roll and see if anybody's missing." And soon the word came back to Saul, "Everyone is present, except for Jonathan and his armor-bearer." King Saul called for the Ark of the Covenant for the priests to ask the Lord what they should do. But when the impatient king heard the noise of battle, he wouldn't wait for God's answer. He left the priest and ordered his men to follow him into the fight. God had turned everything in Israel's favor. The men who'd been hiding in the hills and the caves came out to join the fight. Israelite soldiers who had switched over to fight for the Philistines suddenly switched back. King Saul could see how great the momentum was in favor of Israel. So he made a grand proclamation to his troops. "Cursed be the man that eateth any food until evening, that I may be avenged on mine enemies." Jonathan was still pursuing and fighting. He didn't get the word that he wasn't supposed to eat, and he was exhausted. He came to a place that was overflowing with honey. He had a rod in his hand, and he used it to pick up some of the honeycomb, and he began to eat. Immediately he was refreshed. The army of Israel drove the Philistines out of Israel, and the Israelites began to plunder the livestock that the Philistines left behind: sheep, oxen, and calves. When King Saul asked the Lord whether they should continue pursuing the Philistines, he received no answer, and he wondered why. And then Saul remembered his curse earlier in the day. "Cursed be the man that eateth any food until evening, that I may be avenged on mine enemies." He told his troops, "We're going to find out who violated this curse, and I don't care if it's my own son. He will die." By the process of casting lots, which is similar to rolling the dice, they realized that it was Jonathan who had eaten while he fought. The army watched in astonishment as Jonathan confessed to his dad, I did but taste a little honey with the end of the rod that was in mine hand, and lo, I must die. To which Saul self-righteously replied, Thou shalt surely die, Jonathan. And that's when the crowd stepped in and said to their king, Shall Jonathan die, who hath wrought this great salvation in Israel? God forbid. As the Lord liveth, there shall not one hair of his head fall to the ground, for he hath wrought with God this day. The people saved the life of the man who had saved their land. I don't know of anything I would rather have said about my life than, He hath wrought with God. Christian, God can use you to win great victories for Him. Stay the course.